welcome to Kankakee Podcast, where we talk about the people and places of Kankakee County. I'm Jake LaMore, and one of the many things we have not touched on whatsoever on this podcast, it's always our goal to cover as much as possible in the county. One of those things we have not talked about is fashion. And believe it or not, fashion does exist. Original fashion does exist here in Kankakee County. One of those people in that community is sitting down with us right now. It's Emily Sifrit.
It's here. It's
Yay!
me.
It was so funny before we started recording. I'm like, so you know what you're going to ask me? Or like, what?
Do you have a list of things?
And it's so funny, like, and this is something I get. I guess we're kind of looking behind the curtain a little bit.
The answer was nope.
The answer was nope, yes. But it really depends. Like yesterday I had a recording and I actually prepped for it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know this person. I had met them once, barely knew anything about them. So I was like,
yeah,
I felt, kind of anxious about it.
Did your research.
Yeah, but we've run into each other enough to where I was like, you're just so cool. Like,
well, thank you.
Like you're just one of the coolest people that, it's funny because
I try really hard to avoid ego trips. You're giving me one right now. Okay. Well, carry on. I wish I had my shades on, but okay.
I mean, you probably weren't wearing shades today because it's raining when we're recording this.
No, I had an umbrella that I couldn't figure out how to work right outside the door.
But I just knew that I didn't need to prep for this conversation. So I
appreciate that.
Yeah. And that's a great thing.
Yeah, it does.
That's a great thing.
That says a lot.
And I love that. I love not having to prep for this because I know it's just going to be an awesome conversation.
Absolutely.
So you are from where? Are you originally from this area?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was born right down the road at Riverside Hospital. Yeah, I grew up in St. Anne, which, I mean, for anyone who is not familiar with Kankakee County, so it's like 15 minutes from here. It's a small farm town. And we're this whole county is located really within, we'll say, suburb worthy distance of Chicago, but I don't think we've ever really gotten that much of that label before.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that's an ongoing argument on whether we're a suburb or not.
Yeah, we're just outside, really, kind of doing our own thing down here. I feel like we're similar to the way Louisiana is with the rest of the country. They just kind of do their own thing.
That's true. It's so funny you say that.
Culture. Because
my wife and I have been watching a docuseries on Gypsy Rose. Oh. And, if you know anything about Gypsy Rose, she has a Louisiana background.
I know very little, but I can follow where you're headed with this.
So they have been interviewing her family members, like uncles and grandparents and stuff, and they all are from Louisiana, and their accents, they have such thick accents, and it's like a totally different country.
Yeah, it feels like it. I haven't been there in several years, but there was a few years stint of time. Actually, so it'll hopefully end up being a great segue, but
I'm sure it will be.
At the beginning of where I started switching over from being someone who's known how to sew her whole life to actually a designer. I had some friends down there. I did a show down there. It was one of the first ones I ever did. And so, over a course of a year or two, I probably went 6 times down to that area and stayed with friends. And we hung, I learned kind of, obviously they're locals. So, and so I got to ask questions because you're right. The accent is very different. The mentality of people who have been there forever seems to be a little different. And the way it was explained to me by locals who had been there their whole lives was that originally this was it was a mixture of Creole and French settlement. So you're going to get a very different, root system there than you would in another coastal city in this country.
Yeah, so, it's very unique. Mm-hmm. Very unique. It's so funny because when I heard it the first time, I thought it sounded a little Irish, but then as it went on, I'm like, no, that's not Irish.
No. A little French. Yeah, definitely not. What I told my daughter about this recently that, and I don't know that I'm going to say this right, but one of their very common words, like the way that we say hon or sweetie. And I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I'm not going to say it with the right accent, but basically it's Sha, I believe. I may be so wrong. I did not look this up. I did not plan to say this today. So come on, I didn't fact check myself. Someone else please do. But I just think it's neat that you realize like there's like a small little section of language that literally doesn't leave that area either. And that's kind of neat.
Yep. And it's interesting to know that some of your background in sewing and fashion comes from that area.
My background in exposing the fact that I am what I am comes from not like, yeah. So sewing and background totally comes from, St. Anne, Illinois, grandma's back room where she's got the sewing table and a box of scraps that doesn't care if she doesn't see them again, so I can play with those. It was more just though when you're coming outside the box and learning how to market and learning how to do a show and learning how to collaborate with people, that some of that was down there. Yeah.
So obviously you spent a lot of time with your grandmother then.
Yes.
And was she just that type of homemaker that you could sew, cook, or did she have a passion kind of like you have?
No, she did not. It was my great grandmother, and I was young and I was an only child at that time. And she'd moved here from Southern Illinois to be closer to her son, my grandpa. She really couldn't be alone. I really shouldn't have been alone. I was 7. I shouldn't have been alone either at that time. And my mom worked 2 jobs. So that's where I spent a lot of my evenings. And she really wasn't a fan she definitely wasn't a fan of sitting around doing nothing. So she just started teaching me. And I remember as soon as I could reach the pedals, and my daughter is the same thing. She's 14, but I remember the day she came running at me and said, Mom, I can reach my pedals. I can reach my pedals.
Aww.
As soon as I could reach the pedals on the machine, I could use that instead of the hand stitching. And she just taught me troubleshooting skills consistently for about 4 years. And then she had dementia, she had Alzheimer's, and she went to the nursing home, but I just didn't stop. I inherited her machine, and I just never stopped doing it. And I think nothing drove me at that point to do it other than the fact that it felt very natural. So by the time I was 11, 12 years old, she was not coaching me anymore. But I had enough, I really just want to say oomph about it, that I tore apart. And honestly, any other designer I've talked to that does their own sewing has a very similar story. We all, if they do their own sewing, we've all got a similar story. There's a lot of different ways to be a fashion designer in the world, but this one way seems to have a really similar trajectory to it, which is someone taught you, you just never stopped. You started tearing stuff apart, you put it back together, and I think it's probably really similar. Talking to other creatives who are musicians or they do woodworking.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Everybody's got a really similar story as far as you did it every day. It was on your mind when you woke up. It was just natural, the way people walk, talk, and it's your language. It's a language. Sort of. And
probably spending several hours until you were finally happy with a certain piece, right? I mean, at least that's how my mind works. But maybe that's not a creative. Maybe that's just like ADHD or something.
I think there's a lot of different ways. To gain mastery over your craft. Well, that's actually totally. Have you ever read the book? Is it Blink or Outliers? It's the same Malcolm Gladwell, but the concept of 10,000 hours to.
Oh yes, okay. I know what you're talking about, but I've never read it. No.
How old was I at that point? Maybe 33, 34 when I read that. And I was shocked. I was like, holy cow, if I do the math on that. And at that point, I was still considering myself basically, I'm going to say this, I'm saying this kind of affectionately, but basically like a screw up. Like I was still picturing myself as like, gosh, I just can't get it right. I'm not what I vision in my mind is so wonderful, and the final product I was never satisfied with. So I was still picturing myself as like this very weeble-legged, like starting out and not really masterful at anything, needing to learn so much. And I read that and I was like, holy cow, I've got all these hours and maybe I should start like taking a handful of these things a little more seriously.
Was it because you were just so hard on yourself? Because I imagine you're getting accolades on the outside.
Probably.
Right?
I probably. Yeah, because I think I'd love to use the word visionary here. I think when you're a visionary, you see a potential outcome, and then your brain starts working the how to get there, and you just take the steps and you get as close as you can. And so then I think people like you probably perfect it until you get your outcome. People like me, I'll start a million projects until I come close.
Well, I do that too. I definitely am guilty of just having a bunch of these projects open all at once and them not being finished. I'm very good at that as well. So you started at age 7?
Sewing. Yeah.
Sewing. What was the first thing you sewed that you can remember?
A Barbie dress from probably about that age that I completed, but like garment wise, I was making myself in around maybe like 11 years old. I was making myself PJ pants and tank tops and skirts. So junior high, I'd say I was making clothes for myself more than once every few months. And
that must have been so unique. Like, how many people could you share that with your age at that time in school?
None. And I also will say, it wasn't very well understood either. Now, small little note just for anybody that didn't think that it was very cool then has definitely decided, oh, wow, this is actually really neat and like totally supportive now. But I did get made fun of a few times for what I thought was cute or what I really wanted to create. I definitely had a little bit of... Because
you probably wore some of this stuff to school because you were like, I am so proud of this, you know, I
wasn't necessarily... So this is also interesting. I wasn't proud of it necessarily, or like sketching. I started sketching when I was probably right around the same age, maybe a year later.
And when you say sketching, you mean drawing clothes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Drawing clothes. I traced paper dolls and then added my own. And I was doing that, you know, maybe not as early as I was sewing, but shortly after, a couple of years after that, maybe 9. I think my earliest sketchbook is probably from 9 years old. And I was quicker to be proud of the sketches as they got better. I didn't notice the clothing getting better when I was that age. And I don't know that I was actually quote unquote proud of anything I did until probably high school, just because it looked better at that point and I accepted it as like, oh wow, I probably could have bought that. That's cute. I didn't point out the fact to anybody that I made things though, because again, I'd gotten teased a little bit for it. Yeah. So like it was a little unique. I didn't know at that point. I don't know that I had, maybe in high school, I started doing research on what sort of jobs can you do with this skill? Is it a skill? I just thought it was a weird thing I did.
So by the time you got to high school, then were you set in your mind that this was something you wanted to pursue as a career? Gosh. Was that planted in you then? Or was this a much longer?
Okay. So a couple of things. I want to tell you 2 stories at once. One
Please.
Of them is back in the day, and one of them is very recent, like 2 years ago at a fabric conference in Vegas, because the cab driver had been taking people to and from the convention center all day and was asking, what do you do? Because, this person I can't remember. I had several cab rides that were very interesting that week. And so I'm trying to remember which one it was that said this, but one of them had asked, I've heard so many job titles this week. What do you do? Like, there's so many different things you guys do. What do you do? And so, okay, let me go back in time.
Yeah, sure. Please.
No, I didn't. I was scared of the word fashion designer. Don't know why. I would love to figure that out. I was scared.
It sounds very pretentious, right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
When I saw, but at the same time, I remember seeing the label fashion designer like on like a like college programs brochure, and I'd get chills. like, oh my gosh, like the way you'd look at it like a car, like the best car you could ever imagine to drive, and you're looking at it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got chills. I'd get those chills over just looking at the title. But at the same time, I was scared to say it for what you said. I thought, one, I don't deserve the title. I don't know why I thought that. I think I'm finally over that.
I think there's just a stigma attached to the term fashion designer, to where it sounds like, oh, so you're very uppity and upscale, and I'm better than everyone.
Absolutely. The word bougie drives me crazy. The ask that I will tone down my phrasing here. I'm not going to tell you exactly what was said to me, but the ask of like, well, you must just spend all your time backstages with drugs and women. Actually, no.
No, thank you. That's not what I do.
With any career, if you choose to seek that out, you can find it. But
you can find that in any career. That's true.
But that doesn't mean you have to accept it to do your job well. You don't, actually. You can have boundaries. It's just fine.
I can relate to that a little bit. When I was actively in a band, everyone assumed that I loved to party, and that, I was doing drugs and hooking up with every woman I possibly could. Yeah.
So while if you seek it, you probably find this anywhere. But no, it's not a requirement to do what I do. Actually, more of a reality is sewing until 4 a.m., getting an hour's nap, getting up and going and doing fittings at 5 or 6 a.m. with whoever is ready to. Yeah, no, that's more likely. So, okay.
I totally got you back.
No, it's okay. I can remember where I was.
So yeah, you're in the cab, right? Or did we finish that story?
Well, I backed up for a minute because he was asking me what I did. Right. And like, did I always want to do that?
Yeah.
At that time, so at high school, I loved the word. I knew I wanted to do it. But I felt like, and I got good grades in school, and I came from a family of mostly educators, like close knit to me, educators. I'm not going to say it was expected, but it was assumed I would go to a traditional college and I would, quote unquote, air quotes here, make something of myself. And being an artist was, but the funny thing is, I've recently discovered like everybody in my family is an artist of some sort. Like you all are. I'm like, you're all hiding behind this.
Yeah. They wanted to save you.
My grandma was a music teacher, and she was a musician, and she was an amazing musician. But she also taught. I think she taught some English, she taught some math, and she was a choir director. Like she did what she could. She did everything she could with it to make her parents proud. But I was nervous. I thought I was going to be an English teacher. I really was very excited to do that. I was like, I'm going to make it to this level. And my senior instructor for English, she was like, you really ought to go into journalism. And she was kind of pushing this. Like, okay, I can focus on that. So like all through high school, I was teetering. I'm either going to do this or this. I'm going to do this or this.
I could see you as a journalist because you have that natural curiosity. And I think that's probably why she was like, you should be.
Maybe. And I was pretty good grammatically. So at the time,
I'm sure that's helped you as a fashion designer in some way.
Well, side gigs. I get to edit some other people's articles every once in a while. When they I got one loaded up in my phone right now for my mentor. So yeah, I get like, to make the longest story ever longer.
I'm not helping.
I just what I said to the cab driver, I said that I spent most of my time feeling like I was just falling short as an academic instead of realizing I could be an excelling creative. Because I was fighting that part. I was thinking, I just really, really, really need to be the best I can possibly be as this academically minded person and go that direction right there. And so I always felt like I was just short of excellence. And I was avoiding calling myself an artist or a creative, or I mean, like accepting the term artist didn't happen until my 30s. And think I'd been making clothes my entire 20s. I made a prom dress when I was in high school. Like I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did do that. I made a flower girl dress for a friend's wedding when I was maybe a freshman. And like we worked together. My mom had a restaurant. I worked. So she was an adult, but she was getting married and I was capable. So I made flower girl dress.
That's so cool.
And I just sort of, for everything I would do, I just never like do it and then forget it. And then looking back, it's like, oh yeah, actually you have a few things that stack up over here in this column.
Well, that just means you're constantly having your eyes on the horizon and searching for the next thing.
Most likely.
So
do you want me to catch you up to current?
Yeah. Well,
instead of making it a 3-hour long podcast.
We could easily, I have done that. It's been a while, but I have done it. I think Lupe Carroll I think he holds the title for the longest. Lupe or Matt Yeager? I can't remember which one.
Either one, but they're famous, and so I can absolutely see why.
Well, and you just are so fascinating, and you've done so many fascinating things. You're very easy to talk to. I think the work you do is very fascinating. It's just because I don't know a lot about it. And I mean, that's why I brought you here, is just because I'm curious as to how all of this works.
Well, I'll fast forward you through a few things. I accidentally made a whole business doing alterations and then got really grateful for the fact that I was able to do that as an adult and like full time.
Well, that was probably because you wanted to make a living, right? You needed to support your family. I wanted to make a living. So I had my children in my 20s and I was sewing at the same time. I was accepting enough projects, and I worked out of the home for like 2 days a week, maybe, as they were little kids. I was accepting enough projects that I was like losing sleep at night to stay up all night and complete a favor that I was doing for someone, whether it be, a zipper or whatever. And I thought, well, if I'm like, I shouldn't be telling these people no. Why don't I tell more people yes? And then I can just go ahead and stay home with them. So that was a huge benefit. Wow.
And around the same time, well, I will say right out of high school, I did decide I'm going to go to fashion school. I'm going to go to the school in Chicago. I got accepted. Really short story is that there was a fumble with my admissions and we had to pause we had to redo all the paperwork. So I couldn't start that semester. We could start the next semester if I wanted to. But enough people locally, like my hometown, knew what I was going to do. Like I had a business going before I really had a chance to re-enroll. And I decided to take that route. Like I knew at that, I would say that was like the first very immediate fork in the road as an adult that I'm like, okay, I'm nearly 18 because I graduated a little early. I think I was nearly 18 or maybe right at that point was 18. And what I would say was my first fork in the road. I can either re-enroll and go this route, or I kind of have a business in my hands right now and just roll with that. So I did. And then again, kind of going back to every once in a while, I would think that I would underestimate maybe what I was holding in my hands right in front of me. So a few years later, I'm married and I have one child and I'm interested in fashion and I am doing alterations, but I'm not really making much. I'm not really doing the fashion thing. I'm doing alterations and still teaching myself, thinking that the answer to everything is at that school that I walked away from, not realizing that I'm slowly teaching myself as I go. So a few years later, I have a 1-year-old and an alterations business out of my house. And I went to my first fashion show. So I would have been 23, maybe 23, 24, 23. I go to my first fashion show in the city. It was like an accident. I was at a market and there was a lady there, a girl at the time. And she was a local fashion designer in the city. She had just graduated and she was going to have her own show in Wicker Park. And she invited me because she knew I was wearing things that I had made.
Okay. She could tell.
I got my baby in a stroller. I'm at the antique market in Chicago on Randolph Street. And she spotted me a mile away. You are wearing what you made, and invited me to go to this fashion show. So I'm like,
right. You're like, oh, there's going to be like people that I can mingle with.
So early 20s, I'm super fascinated. I'm going to go downtown. I'm going to, so it was like, it was that week. It was later that week. I brought my sister-in-law with me and we drive up there and we just, I don't know. We were terrified. Are we going to, like, I don't know. We were the stereotypical, not like I had never been to the city before, but I was by myself. I wasn't, we're venturing out.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Especially when you're that age.
Yeah, I was young 20s and really was never gone to clubs or anything like that. So I'm venturing out to do something that I absolutely love. And I'm going to be in a room full of people who are probably going to be like me. Maybe. Do I fit in? I was super nervous. So we went to the first fashion show and it was in a loft apartment. She had moved all her furniture around and she was legit. That's the thing. She'd been written about in the papers up there and stuff. And I realized, I'm looking around, I'm like, she just used her furniture. She just made a runway. Like, this is a wood floor and there's nothing. I'm like, I can do this. Why not? This is just her friends. And this is her friends with the photographer and a few people that happen to know. I can do this. So about a year later, I was working for telling all my stories here. I was working.
That's what we're here for.
I was working for Tom Shamblin at the insurance agency.
Okay, yeah.
And he had just gone into a business relationship to be part owner of the Majestic Center. At the time, it was called the Majestic Center.
Yes.
The theater had not been renovated yet. And I was his front desk gal, and so would this be maybe a year later? I want to say I had my next, I was pregnant with my daughter. I think I was on my next baby bump at that point. So I've got a little guy and I'm pretty sure I have a pregnant belly, and he comes in and tosses the keys on the desk in front of me and he goes, on your lunch break, and this is exactly how he sounds, on your lunch break, why don't you go see what I did? And I'm like, what? And he goes, go see what I bought. What are you talking about? He's like, just go check it out. And so I'm like, Tom, I was like, there's not going to be enough time for me. I've got an hour lunch break. I don't know there's going to be enough time for me to drive all the way down there and back. And he's like, well, take a little extra time. He's like, I want your opinion. Go down there, go see. He did not want my opinion. He
just wanted you to see it.
Well, so I go and I'll never forget. I open the door, you know exactly what the building I'm talking about.
Yes.
So I open the back door down the long, imagine, for those of you who have never been inside the Majestic Theater in Kankakee, Illinois, because maybe somebody's sitting in Iowa right now like, what are you talking about?
Could be.
It's an old vaudeville theater. At this time had not been renovated yet. It was still fire damaged from like a historic fire.
See, I'm jealous that you got to see it at that point because I never got to see it before the renovations.
Right now. Yeah.
So yeah, I am very jealous right now.
So I walk in. At this point, there's a few offices upstairs of this building. Gorgeous building. A few offices upstairs. I want to say it was like there was maybe a therapist's office, and I think there was there's an optech center. Maybe that's what they were called.
Yeah, I think.
Business.
Lisa Dugan, when she was state rep, had an office up there at that time, maybe.
Perhaps similar. Yeah. So we've got some business offices going on upstairs. Downstairs, really not much going on. And it's this, it looks like a cobblestone walkway, but it's brick laid flooring. And these suites it's all glass, glass paneled walls basically as you walk down, and you can open a door and there's different suites in here that could be offices, could be something else. But you walk in down this long, narrow hallway that looks like cobblestone. Just an awesome vibe. I open the back door. it's all dusty. It's kind of dark. I walk down this hallway and I just swear I was like, oh, this could be a runway. So I walk around the very little minimal things that I can walk around in there. And then I go back to the insurance agency and I was like, I don't know if I asked him that day or a couple days later, but I was like, I just want to, you have this already or you're deciding if you're going to have it. Like, really, can I just, before you let anybody lease this, before you change anything about it, because I was afraid I don't know why I thought those floors would possibly be at risk of leaving. So I was like, before you change anything about what it is right now, could I just have 1 hour with those floors? Just an hour. Don't care. Just want that floor. Anyway, I think this was like 2010, 2011. And it just
would have been right around.
Yeah. Really everything. So early 20s, 2010-ish, first fashion show, just everything was brought together by my friends were the models. It was, I didn't plan much. other than another friend of mine did hair. Like I wanted to make a handful of things, and I wanted them to look like they could possibly go together. I wanted to say I did it.
So what did you make?
I made a bunch of like sundresses, basically. It ended up having a very beachy theme to it. Ooh, that's an Easter egg, just some news I have for you. That's awesome. My first fashion show was beach themed. I just signed a contract. I'm going to do Miami Fashion Week in May.
Oh, really? Okay.
Miami Swim Week. Yeah, Swim Week.
Oh, that's exciting.
And they invited me. So I'm going to do that. And they invited me to consider, and I'm doing it. In 6 weeks, I'm going to do their show at New York Fashion Week.
Okay.
So, but it'll be
That's cool.
So yeah, I didn't realize my very first collection. That was such an aha moment. It was my very first collection was beach themed.
It just all ties together.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. I want to celebrate. Like if I could, like, you know, when you text somebody and you can do the balloon. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, the balloon.
I wanted
pops
the balloons to pop up on my screen. In my head, they are.
I can see the confetti right now too, falling from the ceiling.
I just made it. Yeah, I just made sundresses. It was my best friends and people that I would call muses of mine.
Yeah.
They came over to my very, very, very messy, cluttered dining room, and they just said, sure. They just all said, yeah, let's do it. And I was exhausted. And at that point, by the time we're done with, like, I'm telling you all this story, by the time we're done with this, I now have my baby. Like, my pictures of this, she's little. Like, I remember sewing and like got one foot, my right foot's on the pedal and my left foot is bouncing her little baby seat.
Back to multitasking.
I don't know. Like, I honestly, I could fast forward several years here at this point and tell you that while that was very exciting and very quickly, I did a lot of local shows, charity shows. I did a few in the city, and I did some like, I was kind of eager for what's the next step.
Yeah. When I imagine too, like at this point, you're not making money from any of this, right?
Not the fashion, none.
Yeah.
No.
So this is just
alterations.
Okay. So this is just pure
passion.
Yeah.
Probably trying to prove something to myself that then I had no clue what it was. Now, looking back, hindsight being as beautifully clear as it can possibly be, I was probably trying to find out if I was good enough to call myself a fashion designer. Period.
And that didn't come until much later, obviously.
I had literally been to New York Fashion Week in 2018. And a friend of mine was at my house while I was doing a fitting with a lady. Like the time, like at that, I came back from that and I was still working out of my house. And a friend of mine was coming over for dinner and I was having late fittings. Like the schedule did not keep track, right? And she was standing there and like, oh, you guys, why are you guys friends? And she told her like she'd been a model. It was Elizabeth James.
Okay, I was gonna go. So you're talking about Elizabeth James.
She's
everyone knows Elizabeth James.
She's also famous.
She is.
She like I'm so, well, you guys, are you sisters? No, everybody asks us that. And she said that she had just, recently modeled for me. And she's like, we're going to have dinner and we're going to talk about this. And the customer was standing there and looked at me and said, what? And she's like, she's a whole fashion designer. She's like, you make? So I just thought you hem dresses for people. And I'm like, and I didn't know how to say it. I was a seamstress to her. To me and to her, I was a seamstress. To Elizabeth on the outside looking in, she's like you don't even know. Like, no.
You're a fashion designer.
You can be a seamstress. You can be, I'm really comfortable with the word dressmaker these days. She's like, you can be all those things. Like, it's okay to say things. You can make stuff. It's okay to say you make stuff. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you just didn't want, you are very, very humble. And I think that's what makes you so great,
I hope it's what keeps me real.
Grounded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to see it's a tricky line because there's like, I'll sit here right now and I'll say like very level, probably very level headed. say that I don't ever want to lose sight of everything around me. And I think like when you're not humble, or when, when you lose that, you can be so in your own head and in your own story that you lose track of reality. But I also think on the other side of that, you can lose track of reality if you deny what is truly in front of you.
Yep.
Like you can deny a blessing, and that's also losing track of reality.
Yeah.
Ooh, that gives me chills.
Yes, it goes back to, artists, and this can be any type of artist.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be an artist, but just they get to that stature to where people are afraid to tell them, oh yeah, that last movie you made, just, I don't know, wasn't very good, or that last dress you made, or that album, it really, I know everyone told you it was really good, but it wasn't,
So
they just said that because you are so-and-so, and they were afraid to really tell you.
When I ask like feedback about something, I will usually preface it with, I want a real answer. I want the real answer because I can't do anything with bad information. So I want good information here. I want solid feedback. I learned I still do alterations, and I just have.
But you focus now primarily on making things, though.
It ebbs and flows.
Okay.
It ebbs okay. Yeah, I do. But there are times where I'm unrealistic about how long a custom takes. And so I'll have to back that off greatly. I've had times where I'll take 10 customs in a month thinking I know exactly how long it's going to take me. I don't actually. I'm going to end up putting more time into that than I think I am. I should never have done that. I should have done 2 customs that month or whatever. Alterations I've been doing since I was a kid. I really know how long it takes me to replace a zipper. I really know how long it takes me to fix a dress. I kind of do. So I'll let certain things take priority in my calendar sometimes when I need to how would I call that? I need some checks and balances to happen. So I'll go with what I'm confident with until I can get like my handle on the other things. I'm finally getting comfortable with saying like I took this out of other people's other people's books, which is like, my books are, well, actually that was funny. It wasn't, no pun intended there, but like my books are closed right now. Like tattoo artists do this.
Yes, they do.
Like I'm not taking new clients until 6 months from now. And it's so that they can catch up what's in their phone. And I used to just think, I'm really going to piss a lot of people off if I say no to something. And it's like, actually, I'm going to make them more mad if I say yes.
Yes. And then you don't get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have literally said I've said the sentence before, this is to protect both of us right now. I promise you. It's not that I don't want to do this project, but this is for your own good and my own good.
Yeah. So I guess kind of getting present day, there's so many things in between, and obviously just to make it out there, this is something that just doesn't happen overnight. You've worked your tail off, to get to where you are now, and you still are working your tail off.
Probably.
It just never, it's a never ending thing. But like present day, what is your work like? I mean, I know we got the alterations, but you mentioned like customs, and it's like, okay, what is a custom?
So, okay. I love how we take like the little, like the marble on the line and like move it back and forth time-wise. I will say,
got to keep people on their toes.
Yeah. So So we've got so far in this story of like, how did you start doing a fashion show? So I will say I was very eager to see how far certain things could take me. And I've got at that point 2 very small children. I did a lot of stuff. When I say locally, I want to say like this area in Chicago for a few years, and I burn out. Like I got frustrated. Kids get older, life happens. And I was about at the point where I thought, I I don't care if the only thing I ever sew again is a dress for my daughter and pillowcases. I just don't care. I was missing something as far as the structure part of it. Well, also what you had mentioned, that I wasn't making money being a fashion designer. I wasn't. I had zero, and I wonder if this is a thing that happens to a lot of creatives when they go from being an artist to making it their job.
Oh, yeah.
And that is your relationship with compensation around what you're doing. So you go from being an artist, and that's very soul-based. You're the center of all of that. But if you think about a business and you think about a company, that really is not centrally located around one person. It's a structure unto its own. And it has a system, and it has people who are very good at this, this, and this, and they stay in their lane and they do that. You can learn the other things, but it's a process. Okay, that is very different from one person sitting in front of a canvas and painting, or one person, it's totally different structure. And when you go from just that one singular person and you're trying to make a business, it's like you have to separate a little bit. You have to separate some things. And I had not figured that out. Hindsight helped me figure that out a little bit.
Yeah. I love how back and forth and all over the place we are with this conversation.
Because it has to be.
It has to. Well, there's just so many things to Emily. And
well, and I think for anybody, I think that when you, like, instead of repeating, like, you can repeat the same, we can call them mistakes if we want to call them mistakes, or like you can have, like, things are very patterned and cyclical, and you can repeat the same stuff over and over and over again until you're like, hey, actually, if I could learn from that.
I think this is just a true testament to, this is a great example of, you mentioned earlier, like ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
That's kind of like how this conversation is going right now,
Yes.
ebbs and flows. And that's a direct parallel to how a life of an artist is.
Yeah.
In any format of an artist, know. So,
well, and there's some of the, I asked, so very recently, I asked, it's where I lease my studio space from, the owner of that. And he has a successful business, and I don't know if he's 80 years old yet, but what I'll say is he's retired from that part of the business mostly. It's his son that handles it. But I knew him to have had a successful career, and he was very curious about what I did, and he wanted to know more about it and asked me some questions. And I asked him, I said, I've been thinking about this since the first time we sat down here and talked about the space. And I was like, as looking over the course of time, to have a successful business that still stands, and grow, it's nationwide. Do you think it was more big goals that you just went after and just followed through, or was it more little things all the time? Well, before I'd even finished the question, he said little steps every day, little things every single day. And he's like, you're gonna have a crappy day. You just cannot let it get to you. It's one little moment at a time, and eventually it's a lot of them, and it's a big thing.
That's great advice. I think we always get so wrapped up in the big things that we fail to lose the vision that it's really the small things that make the biggest difference over a long period of time. Consistency.
It's one of my favorite words. I think it's like one of the, I'm like ooey gooey, like warmest, nicest, snuggly words I know. And when I'm having regardless, doesn't matter if it's work or anything, when I'm having like the sky is falling day, I will just say to myself, just do the next best thing. I can take this 5 minutes at a time if I need to. I just do the next best thing and go from there. Because by the end of the day, you're over this moment. So as much as you feel like this one agonizing moment is going to last forever, it's not. In 5 minutes, it's gone. So just take it. It's the next best thing. And if that next best thing literally means I'm going to put everything down and I'm just going to go brush my teeth, I don't care, whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah. Just walk away for a minute. I'm honestly really glad you brought that up, because that's a great reminder, just because we get so wrapped in the hustle and bustle of everyday life and all the projects and stuff.
Yeah.
But I am really curious to know, though, how custom pieces work for you. And then also just do you do you get hired to design a line, or do you design a line, or like, how does that stuff work?
So
she's like, oh boy.
The things I've learned, where are we? Are we halfway or 3/4 of the way through our time? Where are we at? This is where I get to be like, yeah, let's jump in. These are the things that I thought that I would never know in life because I did not take that one fork in the road and go to that school.
Yeah.
Look, and by the way, I just want to say, wow, I 100% support that route. I thought that I was ruining everything by not taking that route. And now I finally realized, okay, I have gobbled up a lot of information by doing things the way I did. It's just a different terrain is all.
Yeah, it just proves there's more than one way to accomplish something.
Definitely more than one way to accomplish it. Some of them are a little more painful than others. That's fine.
It's okay.
Not saying which one I took. You could just choose.
I have a habit of picking the harder road too, so I can sympathize with that.
So the way it works for me is, and I learned some of this. I pulled advice from other business models to say, okay, if this works really well for this, like contractors doing a project and bidding a project, this is what I'm going to do for your house. Then I want to take half down because it's materials. And I maybe have to hire out this third-party person to come take care of this one thing. Okay, well, I might have to hire somebody you want this done and you want this special embroidery on it. Well, I don't have that machine. I'm going to have to hire somebody local to do that. So I took structure leads from other businesses and fit it into how I thought it would protect myself best. And a lot of that, well, similar to the way like you look at like a city ordinance book, and like if you look way back, there are ridiculous things in there.
Oh,
like
yes.
You can't like.
Oh yes.
But chickens loose on a Tuesday on this whatever. Like, or
like
okay.
You can't you can't show your legs on a Sunday or something. You know what I mean? Like
everything in there though. Like I just think everything in there is there because something happened. Really? Usually.
No, you're absolutely right.
Something happened and they put that in.
Well, anytime I've had to walk through a code inspection with someone from the fire department, for example, they're always telling me, oh yeah, this code was instituted because someone died from it.
Yeah.
Like almost every code that we put in place is because someone died from it. So
or was marred.
It was something like it comes from,
Yeah.
It comes from
This happened, and now we see this in writing.
Yeah. So it's really cool. So I never really thought about like remodeling a house or building a house. You look at that when it comes to making a piece of clothing for custom for someone, right?
Mm-hmm.
I never really thought about that before. You're like a general contractor.
That aspect, yes. One of the reasons it was easier for me to do, I finally realized that if I was going to be successful, I had to, like when people say like I can give advice all day long, but I won't follow my own advice. Well, I realized if I looked at my reality and I looked at the topic that was in my phone for me, to me, and what am I about to do, my perspective was not great. But I tended to have a little more objective perspective and less emotion about things when I would look at it for anybody else. And so the best way that I could, I want to say, train myself to be healthier in a business-minded aspect or just have better perspective was to say, if this, then that. So, okay, well, if I take myself out of it and I look at something that's similar, this kind of works over here in a similar way. Okay, now it makes a little more logical sense. And now all I have to do is replace, this word with that word. And so instead of this type of material, we're not talking about 2x4s, we're talking about ridgeline, you know what I mean? Like, which is a thing that goes inside a dress. So it's like, okay, I started doing that. And honestly, so I will say, I mentioned earlier, I had a moment of burnout in there. I totally did. Life happens. Kids are getting a little older, totally burnout, kind of feeling like I don't ever want to do this again. And had not ever I made jokes that I would have 4 jobs to support my career, my passion. And that's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
But there was a turning point around 2017 or so where, I'll absolutely call my mentor. His name's Rudy Arias, and he's a photographer, but he also had been he was retired, is retired. He's come out of retirement, but he was retired at the time. Been in the industry. He's originally from South Chicago. At the time, he was living in Florida, but I did one fashion show as a favor to a friend. It was a charity fashion show in the city. I hadn't done one in like 3 years, maybe more. Did this fashion show just to fill in a gap. Somebody had dropped out. Will you do it? And it was one of those pleading, please, please, please. I know you have to, and I'm like, yeah, I don't have anything else going on that weekend anyway. And I guess, and I have some cute little ideas.
Reluctance.
Yeah. And I ran into a great friend, and among many other things, he's a model, but he happened to be there. And I didn't know he was going to be there. Big old hug. Oh, we got to catch up. And he asked what I'd been doing. I kind of told him, and he's like, he had answered a message from Rudy. They were doing a watch campaign in the city. Rudy was going to fly up and, next level. I want to say this was like, no longer was it sort of this like, I want to say like grasping at straws energy of creativeness. It was like, no, these people are career XYZ and work for big, not that you have to work for a big company, but they've got that aspect of understanding how things could be structured a little better, different arena. And they were messaging about this while I was standing in front of my friend. And he goes, you know what? So he starts with, I'm sorry I'm being so rude. And then he goes, actually, I think you should meet this guy. I think you should meet Rudy. He had been in school. He had gone under, oh my gosh, Karl Lagerfeld, who has passed away, but he eventually, was creative director of Chanel. So
wow.
But in the 80s, he was a guest instructor at the Art Institute of Chicago, where Rudy was attending.
Okay.
And so he met him. Later on down the line, Rudy moved to New York, and he did photography for bands like Dave Matthews Band and stuff like that. Like,
that's
his
awesome.
List of things that he had followed his nose for was very interesting and had a lot of perspective on how things go. And I would say like a bigger league. And I'm not prioritizing leagues. I'm just saying a different league, like a little broader. And so we meet, we have a long conversation, because at this point he's in Florida, I'm in south of Chicago, and we have a really long conversation. And he's like, well, what's your goals? What's your, and he's saying things that I've heard these words, but I don't know, like, what's your next campaign look like? What do you mean by campaign? I'm Googling as he's talking. Like, what do you mean? I've done this stuff before, but I never called it the things you're supposed to call it. And I definitely never did it the way you're supposed to do it. And what he ended up saying was, he's like, I sense you are not ready to enter into, he's like, I don't think you're ready to hire me and enter in for your next collection. And I'm like, I don't have a collection. He's like, what I think you need is a little mentoring and to be booted out from behind your rock. And I'm like, ooh. He's like, here I'm coming with the crowbar.
You're like, yeah, I felt that.
I did. He's like, I think you need, so without realizing it, he was handing me opportunities to act like this, like manifesting 101, to act like the leader of my own company, to make decisions that somebody at a boardroom table would have to make, to talk like that, to plan things like that. Not that I was incapable, I just was not practicing it.
Yeah. Well, in my mind, what I'm thinking is, before your burnout, you're just grasping everything in sight. You're doing everything possibly in sight.
Anything anybody asks me to do.
Right. And then when you come back after that burnout, it was like, oh no, I'm going to take a moment. I'm going to let this sink in, and then I'm going to, give an answer, or I'm going to react or not react or whatever. It was just like, I'm going to think about this a little bit before I go, oh yeah, gimme.
Yeah.
I'm going to put some extra thought into it. And
so spoiler alert is, you will still be given you will still in life, you will still be, here's my wise sage advice here.
Ooh.
You will still be given opportunities to act the exact same way you did 10 years ago or 5 years ago or however many, phases ago. You're going to be continued to get, given opportunities to repeat your actions the exact same way. And I probably did. So just on a different level. But what it did was it got me creating again. It got me thinking like next steps ahead again. And ultimately, because of stuff he and I did together, I became relevant online again and then got offered to go to Fashion Week for the first time, 2018. And I thought it was a joke. And he actually had to tell me that's not a joke right there.
So you get offered.
I was invited. Yeah, I was invited by this.
And how do you explain Fashion Week to someone that has no idea what it is?
And look, this is everybody's got their opinion on sports teams and the best way to go about recipes and what chili tastes best, and deviled eggs, for crying out loud, can start a whole family feud. So, people have varying opinions about Fashion Week and whether or not it's worth it, relevant, whatever. It is in the US, I want to almost call it like accredited colleges. Like there's like what gets the official stamp on it. There are only a few cities and times of year where this industry recognizes like a hub of showing a brand's next collection. So for Fashion Week in New York, it's twice a year, and people from all over the world will come to this one place for 5 days, and you connect and you network and you go to showrooms, and people are like, okay, well, this is what I want to sell. Traditionally, it was that. Traditionally, it was, I'm showing my next ideas. I'm showing the next season's ideas, and everybody gets brought together here so that if I'm interested, I can pay for it. I can buy it and I can put it in
someone who owns a retail store or a chain,
Yeah.
or, it doesn't even have to be that. It could be an actual designing house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a manufacturer.
Lots of things. There's so much. It's a broad industry.
I've learned that.
You have learned that.
I've learned that. Yeah.
So for me at the time it was, but it also does, again, this is really like relative to the opinion of the person listening or saying it, but it can give a little credibility to, hey, if this company's going to vouch for you and put you on their stage, it's like a resume piece, really. It used to be. It has shifted a little bit. COVID kind of did some stuff to it, but it's like a stamp almost. It's like, okay, well, I'm a runner and I did the Chicago Marathon.
Yes, it's like the corner office.
Kind of. So, and it makes it easier to be found. If you're looking to be seen, that's the other thing. If you're looking to be seen.
That's a good way to get someone's attention after the fact. You can be like, oh, I was at Fashion Week. I was on this stage. This person, this organization, this company vouched for me.
Yeah. So I did it. He proves to me that it's not spam. It's not spam. When I came back from that, going back to the custom question, because you asked that, this is why I'm even telling you all this story. I came back from that in within about 6 months, because my customers that I'd been fixing things for, all of a sudden were like, will you make me a dress? So I had consistent clientele already coming. I'm going shopping and I want you to fix my clothes before I wear them because this isn't quite right. And I know,
But now it's just like, can you actually just make me something instead of me having to go to the store and look for something for you to fix?
So it was, well, this girl did that. So I spent money to be there. I spent money to be there on room, on models, on whatever. Spent money to be there. I was excited, but gosh, could have cried over what it took out of me. I was very excited to go. But then I came back and I realized, oh, but they're my customers that are right here at home are really proud to say, that's my girl. And it just kind of grew from there. So then all of a sudden, as far as like maybe I did 90% alterations, 95% alterations, 5% custom. All of a sudden it started shifting to like 60-40. And then I went again the next, within a year, it was like half and half.
That's a big change.
Like literally the numbers could not lie.
Wow.
That's where my logical brain was like, oh, okay. Okay. So,
But all those years of alteration led up to that point, as you pointed out earlier.
Knowing my machine, knowing how to work with a body, knowing what was ridiculous for certain people to have to wear or not wear and what other people wanted to. Because some of the things I make are ridiculous for wearing out every day.
Yes. But what it's going to show is that foundations matter.
Very much.
And you built that foundation. Yes. Without even knowing it until...
So that again, hindsight. That's why the ebbs and flows of this conversation and life, because you don't ever know it in the moment. You know it.
Do you think anyone is lost at this point listening to this?
It's fun.
They're like, what are we talking about now? Who is this? Where are we?
Listen, we drop jokes every 8 minutes or so just stick around for the next one.
Man.
Yeah.
But how does it work then, though, for, getting outside of the custom realm? Someone approaches you to make a dress or a jacket or whatever it might be. But, getting out of that, how does it work for, like, I don't know if lines is what or collection? Like, do you do any of that? Or is that something you're collaborating with other designers on or manufacturers, or are you even making any of that yourself? I mean,
so this in the last, we'll say 5 years or so, I would make a collection to satisfy the requirements of a show to be able to go and keep relevant with like exposure, basically. So it would be whatever I wanted to make.
And would you come back with that collection and then have to like produce that collection?
That's always been the readiness. Like, so some of the shows I've done, they won't let you on the stage unless you are prepared to. They're not all like this. You have to be prepared to fulfill an order from like a buyer in a certain time frame. Again, they're not all like this, but some of them have been like that. So then what I would do before going is research, okay, say this happens, then I would be ready to put these wheels in motion over here.
Because you're not the one that's mass producing.
No.
And when we say mass producing, I mean, we're talking like smaller quantities.
I'm also, that's the other thing too.
But you're not going to be doing that yourself. You're going to hire someone else to do that.
So at the moment, actually, I will do then very small. When you say mass produce, I'll probably do like five jackets, and like there'd be one on stage and then 5 available online. It's really like
very small, very niche,
kind of exclusive. Like, I mean, there'd
like
be
craft beer.
Yeah. But like there may be like, so like say there's like a specific top, there may be 50 of that available, 50 of those available. But then also, what's interesting now is in the industry too, is that you can move a little quicker in the industry because small lot production is more accepted and almost wanted in some, in some areas. It's what people actually want. It's more attractive, I guess is the word. It's more attractive in certain areas.
Well, sure. I mean, anything like that to where it's like, hey, there's only a small quantity of these things. It instantly makes you like, oh, it just makes
sustainability.
It sounds good.
Sustainability is attractive too.
Well,
so then people
that too. Yeah. But it's still, it's a great marketing, thing to say, oh, there's only so many of these available. Yeah. So even if the intent is just to make some high quality pieces and only make a small batch, it just it's appealing.
Yeah. So I think that the most of what I would make would be something like 50, maybe 100 of something, and it would. I love the ability to do like Instagram shops, and this is all. There's so much more available right now than there was. Definitely more than 20 years ago, but even more than 10 years ago. So there's lots of different avenues that you can take stuff like that. Nobody has ever not a large company has never reached out and said, hey, I want you to make, I guess a store did one time. A store was like, I want, she just wanted certain dresses. But again, everything's a conversation. That's actually my point. Everything can be a conversation, because what she really wanted was the ability to dictate, like, this was years ago too, by the way. This was years ago, but she really wanted, she wanted what was in her mind. She probably should have designed it herself and went to a manufacturer. She had an idea in her mind and she wanted so many of them. She wanted me to make it. She wanted the price point to be that something she'd bought on Amazon. Not going to happen. It can't happen that way. It just can't happen that way.
No, that's not how you operate.
Boundaries have to be a part of this.
Right. Well, and as an artist, that kind of defeats the purpose, right? I've
turned a blind eye to that many more times than I probably ever should have, just because I don't know why, actually. I don't love what it feels like when it's done. I'm getting better about that. I'm getting better about letting what is in my idea be a priority. I'm getting better at that. Yeah. That's been a tough one.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
That's been a tough one.
So do you make mainly women's clothes, or do you make men's clothes, kids' clothes? I mean, have you made, I would imagine at this point you've made so many different things.
Yeah. So when I do custom, it's someone reaches out and they're like, I have this, this is a thing I'd really like. I can't find it anywhere. Can you do it? I look up the pricing, the materials. I kind of figure out how long it's going to take me. I shoot them a price. They want it or they don't. In that realm, yes, I've done men's jackets, and I've not a traditional suit, but I did like a prom suit that had like silk pants. You know what I mean? I've done a few of those. I don't do as many of those because I'm not as experienced with it. At one point, I had a small waiting list for custom jackets because I had done one really amazing one.
And then everyone was like, "Oh, I want a jacket like that."
One really amazing one, and then I had a small like waiting list of just like friends and like associates, and I was like, okay, but I can't do it quickly, and I will. But so it was like in my phone, I had like 9 people. Like, when you do figure out how to do this a little quicker, I want a jacket.
I mean, I would be interested. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. Well, I'll add you to that list.
Okay.
I should what I really...
Jake, it's going to be 5 years.
It's possible because my friend Corey Stalkup's been waiting for about 9.
Oh man, so that means it's like 10 for me then.
Well, what I really need to do is have one really capable helping set of hands in my studio that knows some of like those quick tricks that I don't, that keep me. People can't just drop in your studio. No, it's appointment only.
Yeah.
It's appointment only because the way I do things is a little bit of everything. So I'll spend a little bit of time working on maybe my own website. And then there's other times where, I'm on the phone or I'm doing some sort of planning where like I'm behind my computer and I can't stop what I'm doing. Or if I'm doing a fitting, doing a private fitting, and that's an hour long.
I didn't even get to what the name of your company is. We've been talking for hours on end and I didn't even mention that. I just failed as a host.
No, not at all. I didn't even think about it. I failed as a marketer. I just came for story time with Jake.
Hey, I'm enjoying story time with Emily. So it's e.Kaye. Collection or just e.Kaye? It's just e.Kaye.
Kind of like how Muy Muy Prada has evolved over the years. It just, things drop off. It splits into 2. Yeah. So e.Kaye, it's my initial. It's great grandparents' last name. And
that's K with an E on the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. But yeah, it was started as e.Kaye Collection because I thought it sounded more mature.
It does sound very official, but I like e.Kaye. Just,
So it depends on what mood I'm in when I write it down on when I register for something.
Right.
It depends on what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
My website's ekcollection.com. Hey, there's a plug.
But
don't go look at it for another week because I'm updating things. It'll be much better.
Well, by the time this is out, who knows what it'll look like.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure when this will be released yet.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, ekcollection.com. That's what I thought your website was. And that's why I was thinking collection was in the title.
Yeah, it ought to be. I'll let her stay.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to cover about yourself, your story, fashion as a whole? I feel like it goes without saying that fashion is not what we all perceive it to be. I think that was said without saying it.
Yeah.
So
I think it's so. My daughter has a really good opinion about this, but I think it is. It's just expression. It's not like, in my opinion, it is not about. Look, I'm wearing a shirt right now. I think I got for $1 at the thrift store. Still had its tags on it. Like,
and she's a fashion designer. I'm a fashion designer,
and I fixed my jeans to suit me because it's an expression. It's how are you feeling inside, and how do you want to express yourself. And if you're not going to be, maybe you're not going to be literally vocal about it, but just to feel good. And that's honestly what I do it for. Is it's just it happens to be something that I think I was born with this like set of skills, and in a way to help people feel good and express themselves. And also really I'm learning it's okay to also express myself with it. Like if I have these ideas, then I can express myself. And I think that energy getting out is what's important for the world. So like a musician doing the same thing. If you have a song in your head, no one's ever going to know it's there unless if you put down the notes. And so it was given to you for a reason. And I think that fashion, it's just a word to describe that avenue of energy. And it just so happens to be a huge industry. And so
well, we all need things to wear, right?
Playing in it. Yeah.
Clothes.
Yeah.
You know, the dogs need clothes too. Yes. That's another part of the fashion industry we haven't even talked about.
And I think other than that is just to like, not ever to think that because of where you're located or what your surroundings are, or what that doesn't change what's inside of you. And you can really just keep at what's calling you.
Yeah. Well said.
That's my bumper sticker advice.
That's so well said. I have nothing to add to that other than the fact that we're both wearing stripes today.
Like that.
And they're both the vertical stripes. Yours are just wider than mine, but it's so funny.
Not planned.
I know. But I saw this shirt and I was like, I think I'm going to wear this today. Little did I know that you were also going to be wearing vertical stripes.
Sending out the antenna signals.
Well, Emily, this has been so much fun. I know this could literally go on for a couple hours.
We'll pause here. Maybe a while down the road, like in another year or something like that. We'll just get together and we'll talk about another aspect.
We'll do an exclusive Kankakee Podcast e.Kaye collection.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
Dream it up. I'm there. Okay.
I mean, I love jean jackets, so, we could.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know.
We'll figure that out. Okay. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Of course. Thank you for doing it. That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the fine team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll. This river